Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Rise reluctantly to disagree with my colleague, the Honourable Trevor Mallard. Before I do, I would, however, like to take to task the comments made by my colleague Stuart Nash that somehow or another the retrospectivity of this legislation would be, of these matters would be determined by the courts, because the next speaker, my colleague the Honourable Trevor Mallard, pointed out at the bottom of page 60 that at least one aspect of this legislation goes back to 2005-06, and he mounted a particularly good argument as to why it needed to go back further. So that seems to me to be yet to be resolved in the committee stages of the House. Well, I'll disagree with my colleague, the Honourable Trevor Mallard, in a minute, but before I do that, I would like to ask the Honourable Stuart Nash if he would take another call and explain to me why he thinks that retrospectivity doesn't apply in this legislation. It appears to me that it does. Now, of course, if the Minister would be able to help, that would be fine, but we're not anticipating so much assistance from that quarter. Now, as to the remarks of the Honourable Trevor Mallard, I agree in part with them, and I hesitantly, because he is an accountant and I'm a simple country veterinarian, very simple country veterinarian. I simply hold the view that in the case of members of Parliament, because that's where he was directing a lot of his comments, I don't think that these provisions would apply, because the Member of Parliament has a principal place of residence which is not here. And of course, if assistance were given for that, the principal place of residence, then of course you would expect it to apply as you would for any other form of fringe benefit. But a Member of Parliament, like a sort of travelling salesman, will have a principal place of residence but will have accommodation costs as part of their weekly circuit or whatever it is to be, and that surely cannot be subject to taxation so much as real and actual reimbursement of costs. Now, if one looks at it a bit more carefully, however, there is an exception. And the one exception is the one that my colleague drew attention to, and that's where we have a point of agreement. The point of agreement is that the Honourable Bill English is caught by this. And the reason that he's caught by this is that he's got two principal places of residence, or has had for a number of years. One of them is the real, actual principal place of residence, which is Wellington, because that's where he lives, it's where his family lives, it's where his kids go to school, and on it goes. And the other one is back in Dipton, which is where he said his principal place of residence was, so that he could get a deal on the other house. So that's where the term double Dipton, I can't remember who first coined that. Oh, that's right, it was the Honourable Trevor Mallard. The term double Dipton came from. And I think that the member for Clutha Southland is uniquely vulnerable to these clauses. And so then the question arises, if it's good enough to be retrospective to the year 2005 and 6, why should it not be retrospective beyond that? There's no 7-year rule here. That's about a 4 or 5 year rule. We do know that the member in question has lived in Dunedin and Wellington since the year 2000. In fact, it's a little earlier than that, I'd like to advise the Honourable Trevor Mallard. So I strongly support the idea.
But didn't he have a state? Did he have a state house?
Well, there was a period of time, I think, where he boarded or rented, but then he purchased. And I'm trying to remember all those years too. So perhaps I should just say that my gentle recollection is that it's a little before the turn of the century. So I agree with my colleague that in the case of the Honourable Bill English, yes, this legislation on its face appears to make him vulnerable to pay back a whole bunch of money and not before time, although still not enough, because that whole period from 2005, period before 2005, however long it is, he still gets away scot-free. So it's good that there might be some more money coming into the government's coffers from that Member of Parliament, but it is not okay that he still manages to max out his benefit at the expense of the taxpayer more than any other MP I've ever come across. So I think on that basis, Mr Chairman, my colleague...
That was the bell.
I'm sorry? Oh, that was the bell.
Chairman.